Did you see me? That's pretty good, huh? That is one fun game.
Right.
Hey, do me a favor, just grab me a bottle of water? Thanks.
I've never met a woman championship rugby player.
I fell in love with rugby in college, like a lot of people do. Well, if now they have better high school and youth programs, but at the time, it was like college was where you might run into rugby. At first, we were just hanging out. I was dating one of the guys, and so I met the girls' team that they were starting, and they were just the coolest chicks. Once I felt what that was like to play like a contact sport where it's allowed, I was like, wow, I have been wasting my life.
And I played in a men's drop-in rugby team. And before that, I played a little bit here in San Diego with, it's a Gaelic football. I think what they did was they said, they bring people in just to beat the shit out of them. I mean, I left there. I the feelings that I had were like I was abused, and I mean, these guys were hitting me. It reminds me of Meet the Fockers when they're playing, or not Meet the Fockers, Wedding Crashers when they're playing football. I mean, I got beat down. What is cannabis doing for you?
Put some dog tags together, man.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome back to PV Unfiltered. And even though we did take a week off a little while back, we're still the #1 cannabis podcast. I don't know what that was. Is that something new?
That's our new air horn. That was our new air horn.
That's horrible.
I know. I found some guy. I just found some guy doing it.
He literally hit that air. That we have a different one. He hit that and he looked at me like something was wrong.
I wanted to switch it up. I found some guy just doing it with his mouth. Okay,
So
let's
guys,
give her the real one. Let's give her the real one.
Oh, there we go.
There
That
we
was the original. Thanks for that. So this one, I say it all the time. I'm not even going to say it. Anna Symonds. We're going to get into this because I know she looks like this sweet, innocent person on the other side sitting in a cannabis field in Hawaii. But reality is this is the person that you don't want to see on the field. And I say the rugby field because this is her passion in so many ways. And also now the Last Prisoner Project is the passion. And I think probably because of this COVID stuff, it's been put to the forefront for her, I believe.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, #1, for having me on and for the chance to talk about this. I am so proud to be an ambassador for Last Prisoner Project because they're doing important work that no one was doing. There were re-entry programs out there and different resources, but nobody was specifically saying our mission is to get cannabis prisoners out of jail, out of prison, and fight for them. And so, the organization has done a lot in its relatively short existence. And so I'm just proud to keep helping to spread the word and advocate and support all the work that they're doing.
So let's take a step back because we cannot go without your history in the sport of rugby and what's driven you on that side of it, because that's amazing in itself. So let's go back. Rugby. That's your true passion.
Thank you. Yeah. I fell in love with rugby in college, like a lot of people do. If now they have better high school and youth programs, but at the time, it was like college was where you might run into rugby. And I'd been a soccer player my whole life, and I played year round, and I just transferred to a new school and started playing with the team there, but didn't really like that program a lot. And I became friends with the rugby team, and they were like, oh, come play. At first we were just hanging out. I was dating one of the guys, And so I met the girls team that they were starting, and they were just the coolest chicks. And, you know, as fate would have it, those are some of my best friends in the world to this very day, because I did end up quitting the soccer team and playing rugby. But once I felt what that was like to play like a contact sport where it's allowed, I was like, wow, I have been wasting my life. You know, don't get me wrong, nothing against soccer. I loved it, but rugby is just so suited to me and my strengths as an athlete and my personality. You know, being able to be openly aggressive when you're running with the ball or when you're defending. And so it's just
yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And that's
it's
exactly
like nothing else.
That's exactly why I started my soccer career late in life. Like it was actually like 8 years ago, and both of my sons were like, "Hey, we're gonna do a company soccer team," and so we, with about 15 of our people in our company, we started we joined a soccer league, and my son's stint, we lasted 4 games. We all come from a hockey background. Both my sons played very high up in hockey, and so there's no checking in soccer, but for some reason we felt that was really necessary. So, you know, the keep your head up in hockey, we did that in soccer. And so I had 4 games before, and my youngest son had 1 game, and then he was ejected and he was banned from the facility. And then my other son and I both made it through 4 games. We were ejected in each game, and then finally the last one was really bad, and they just said, you guys are no longer welcome. As a matter of fact, you can't even come to the complex. And so I even went later on, I went to go watch a friend's team play, and they came down with security. I was just sitting in the stands watching. They came down with security and had me escorted out. And I was literally not even saying a word, but yeah, so I understand that feeling. As you know, I played hockey for years, and even up until probably about 9 years ago, somewhere is when I've, you know, kind of stopped and just busy and whatnot. And once again, being sore, that feeling that you're talking about, and a lot of people don't experience, it's a way of venting in some way, but other ways it's almost euphoric when you are doing it the right way. And you can be aggressive, and if the person on the other end understands it, they're in the same mode. So when you have a really good check in hockey, the other person is like almost grateful, because they go, wow, like that was really good. Even though you were on the other end of it, like, yeah, you got me. And then later on in that game, it just keeps your head on a swivel, because now you have that momentum, and that person's, you know, kind of doing the same thing. And so I don't know, that I think I really do understand that. And it's but on the women's side, it's got, because women, I've watched like lacrosse. I'll watch a women's lacrosse before men's. They're brutal. Like I think there's more penalties in women's than men's, and the same thing with hockey. I think you get to this point where it's like, okay, we're doing this, and guys kind of back off in some ways, but women don't. And women lacrosse is like, it's a blast to watch.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. Yeah. I think it's great that that you feel that way, you know, that you're a fan. And it's great for us to have that outlet where we don't have it so many places in life. You know, it's not necessarily welcomed for women to just like unleash their aggression, and it's very primal, and I think it's like healthy, and like you said, it's euphoric too, both during and then afterwards. You just have this glow. You're full of, endorphins and adrenaline.
And just like you said, and afterwards, absolutely, because then all you do is you spend the next 30 minutes in the locker room talking about all the shit that just happened, and then everybody leaves and goes grab pizza and beer, and they talk more shit, and usually with the people that you were playing against.
Yeah, that's another great rugby tradition, is that we have a social, and so the two teams, do whatever on the field, leave it all out there, and then you sit down and you laugh together and like, oh, great hit on me that time, or just get to know each other. There's some respect there, so I like that part of the culture.
So not playing rugby right now because of COVID. Hopefully that's going to come back online. They're saying the 15th of this month is when COVID decides it's going to leave. And so in California, we get the rights to not wear a mask and to go do the things that we used to do. I'm not sure where COVID is moving to on the 15th, but we do know that it's supposed to be out of California. So hopefully COVID's not going to Hawaii or staying. Hopefully he's leaving Hawaii as well. I have no idea why the 15th was the day, but
well, yeah, we're just waiting for our league was waiting for we don't have a lot of money. Weird that a women's rugby league doesn't have the same funding. We're working on that, but long story short, just the logistics of having teams all across the country flying to each other every week. And we're just trying to make sure that all the different cities are able to participate and their members can participate. And we're just, kind of ramping back in. But yeah, for me, I don't know. COVID may have put a little wrench in the, in the works, because I moved out here. So it would be a big commute for me to play in the league. But who knows? Maybe next year. We'll see. There isn't much going on this year. There might be something like little games this fall, but
yeah, I think we're tailing off on a lot of we usually go to Oktoberfest in Munich, and they literally up until two weeks ago, they were on. It was going to happen. Then they said, they're going to shut it down for another year.
Oh.
But I think it's all going to, I think we're getting to the end of this, and I think everybody's going to be okay.
Yeah, it feels like it's moving in a positive direction. I do still worry about the Olympics, for example, and having friends who are preparing for that, but they're going, it could get yanked out from under us at the last minute. Like, we don't know,
Isn't it crazy, something like that you train your whole life, and sometimes it's just a one-shot deal, and this is coming up, and the people that are training, they may never get another shot.
Yeah.
I hope we move forward with this stuff.
Especially age-wise, like I'm definitely on the tail end of my career age-wise, just realistically. Like, I've already pushed it quite a bit. And it takes a lot more work the older you get, to stay performing at the same level that you did. You just have to train harder. You have to spend way more time recovering and, looking after your nutrition and all that stuff. So, so take the moments when they're there. And I do hope that, my friends get to do that, and the other athletes, but we'll see.
Well, let's talk about Last Prisoner Project, because I think more so now this is hitting, it's hitting home for a lot of people, and especially in our industry. It's crazy to me that just because of a law, or however you want to look at it, in place, somebody that's been in jail, or let's just say not jail, let's call it prison, and has been in prison for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years for something that you don't even get a ticket. And so it's strange to me that I get it if it was part of a group of a crime or something, and that was, how a lot of times they'll have different counts for, you did a robbery, but you also had marijuana, or, whatever it is. But if somebody went to jail for a pound of marijuana let's just say they went to jail for 20 pounds of marijuana and they got prison, they got 15 years, which wasn't unusual back in that time, for 15 pounds of marijuana. I can drive down the street right now with 100 pounds of marijuana and I can get pulled over and I could tell them I have this and I'm getting nothing at all. Mm-hmm. Why would that person still be in prison? Oh, because that was the law then? So we're now in this thing where it's like, oh, you're grandfathered into this crime and you're going to do the time. And it literally makes no sense at all.
Absolutely. Agreed. It's crazy. And it gets even worse when you think about the fact that we have, all these different states have their own different laws. So there's this patchwork across the country and it's a gross injustice. And especially when you see, you mentioned like charges being added on, but what you see is that a lot of times like marijuana is an excuse for searches of vehicles that they hope to turn out other things. Or like, we saw Michael Thompson, who was released finally this year in Michigan. One of the reasons that it was so hard for them to secure his clemency was that he had firearm charges, but he was arrested for cannabis. He had, so then they got a warrant for his house, right? So he wasn't even there. And they found like an antique musket, essentially, that didn't even work at the house. It wasn't with him. It was, so this was all very, such a reach. And it was added. And because then you're like, oh, well, he had a weapons charge, but what was that really, And so the long story short is that this shouldn't be a crime. It's a plant. And so we have to fix this history that's been,
it's like Build-A-Bear. Yeah. It's like Build-A-Bear, but build a crime. And that's what I've looked into this a lot and I've watched a ton of stuff on this and all of these cases are just like that, where, they pull somebody over, they find marijuana, then they dig and they start going into all these things to build a case around the fact that the guy had a speeding or ran a stop sign or just something. Mm-hmm. And they built this. And the downside about this too is that when you really look at this, and this is the bad part, especially right now with everything that's going on in our world, is it's so racial. And the people that are typically sitting, I mean, the majority are predominantly black with these convictions. Yeah. And it's, and it's very clear. It's very clear that there's a big racial position in this because so many white people have been pulled over and have had that. And you get a $275 ticket or you just, and it just kind of goes on its way. And this is where, I mean, I'm telling you, this is a big divide and they will go out of their way to build a case on somebody that doesn't have anything. And then they wonder why these situations take place where somebody runs from the cops, even though they just had an expired registration or something like that. And then it, expired. And people go, why'd they do that? Well, I mean, there's certain things that we're fortunate of in some ways and other people aren't. And in this case, especially with that, there's a huge amount of African-American people that are sitting in prison, totally unjust. And started with a traffic citation that ended up with, the guy had marijuana. Oh, well, let me see this. And then they go back to the house. Just exactly what you're talking about. They just start building into this.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can even go to the data to see it too. So we have data showing that people across various races use cannabis at roughly even levels. Everybody likes pot. Weird,
Right.
But then arrest and prosecution rates are 4 to 5 times higher for Black people. And also, what is it? At least it's at least 90, it might be a little over 90% of cannabis arrests nationwide are for simple possession.
Yeah.
So not people even trafficking or selling or whatever. And so then you start to look at that and you see this pattern. And like you said, it's ruining individual lives, but it's also ruining families and communities. And, you know, Black communities across the US have faced the brunt of this too. And so there is that whole additional aspect of racial justice that really ties into the general social justice of freeing the plant and then freeing the people who have been, you know, just unjustly persecuted.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, when you talk about the effect, I mean, you can talk about what the effect of COVID and what it's had on the world in starting at a small place and going to where we are today. And how does that look? And the same thing when you talk about the African-American communities where, everybody uses cannabis. But there's this stigma that's out there, and it's like, okay, where's your dad? Well, my dad's in prison. What's he in prison for? Well, you know, he's in prison because of cannabis or because of pot. Okay. You know, should he be there? That's the biggest question. And it doesn't make, you know, for us to sit back and be like, it's almost like being hypocrites, but listen, cannabis is great. It's great for everybody. This isn't what that stigma has been. The downside is that there's communities that are affected when you talk about fatherless homes, you know, in a lot of those ways. Yeah, they're in prison. They're in prison for something. If it's bad, I get it. But if you're talking about cannabis, get them out. Like there's no reason. And the downside too is that when they do get in, these guys, you know, everybody's put in prison for cannabis. They're put in with all the bad people, all the people that have murdered, that have, you know, had armed robberies. So what happens? They end up with other convictions while they're in prison. And that turns into something that, you know, this person that's just like you, I, or anybody else that was driving down the road, left work or whatever, has marijuana in their car. At that time, you couldn't have, you know, 5 grams and you were going to jail. And so, you know, regardless, boom, you get caught, you go to jail. And then while you're in prison, you start, you know, because you're with everybody. It's not like going to, you know, to a federal prison, you know, for taxes, where you're just, you know, there to spend time. You're with hard time criminals. Then it starts this whole thing where people are fighting. I would be that guy. You know what I mean? I mean, you would be that girl because that aggression side is there. And you know what I mean? It's just one of those things that you fall into this system. Pretty soon you're done. Like the marijuana charge was the beginning, and now you're in for fighting, for, you know, all these other things, and you're just in the system now.
Right. And then say you do get out eventually though, then you have to deal with having felony on your record. So that affects your housing, your jobs, you know, it affects, your custody, can you even, you know, volunteer at your kid's school, all of these things that are part of people's lives and their human rights, you know, and all for this plant. So, I mean,
so when somebody gets out, like working with Last Prisoner, what are the actions or what are the avenues for somebody when they finally do get out of prison? Is there participation on the Last Prisoner's side to help rehabilitate into society? Is there avenues for employment? You know, because once you get out, that's when it all starts again.
Right. Yeah. So I know that they were working on a pilot reentry program specifically focused in Oakland, and you know, with jobs, housing, support, et cetera. And I do believe those jobs were in the cannabis industry, which is a little bit of poetic justice.
I mean, how great is that?
This is a, you know, now you can have a job, W-2, you know, pay your taxes, but you're working in the industry. And then we see, you know, folks like again, Michael Thompson in Michigan is now working in the cannabis industry with his son. But, you know, so reentry is a big piece. And I think, that part is very tricky as well. Like the resources needed to support people when they've been through all that and to put all the pieces in place is hard. And so I think they're building that out bit by bit, because they don't want to rush to, create a huge nationwide program, and they want to make sure it's going right. But I believe they also partner with other organizations who provide those resources outside of any kind of cannabis connection. But, working on the clemency piece, just getting people out of prison, the first step, and then even the advocacy for before that, for reforming cannabis laws so that we're not sending people to prison. So it's that whole life cycle of, ideally we want to stop cannabis arrests, just completely stop that new arrests, get people out who are in prison, and then bring them back into the community.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that kind of parallel, and I think we dropped the ball as all of us. And we're when you look at our soldiers coming back, and we have such a poor rehabilitation, if you want to call it that, or reintroducing them to this side of life where they have been serving our country, and dealing with the things that they've dealt with, and then they get dropped on the street here, and it's like, okay, go do your life now when you've been doing what you're doing, and there isn't a big avenue. And that's one of the things that we support heavily here. And then HVGC, which is Battle Brothers Foundation, which is, they are in our offices here. And we're a big supporter of really helping vets as they return and are getting out of, the military, whatever branch. They literally they kind of go, okay, thanks for your service. See you later. All the things that you've seen and done, and all this service that you've done, appreciate it. Now go figure yourself out.
You give us a week.
Okay, you get a week. And because Tommy was in the in the Navy for 20 some years.
Yeah, it's mostly just transitioning into an employment place. So they just go over like your resume and how you can actually apply for jobs, because obviously you've been in for like 20 plus years. You're kind of out of that loop,
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's a great example when you talk about the, you get a week. They give you, I think it's a month to get in, and they train you. You go through all this stuff. And then if you're going into a specific branch, or if you're going into the Raiders or you're going into SEALs, then you have a whole other side of training. You go through all this training, and then all said and done, you get out and they go, hey, see you later. Here's some pamphlets on how to. To me, it's horrible. And the parallel there is, it's the same whether it's cannabis or anybody getting out of prison. There's no, yes, there are some, things that are available, but people get out of prison, they drop them off at the front gate. It's like out of the movies. They literally drop them off the front gate and they go, all right, go do you. And then you wonder why there's such a fail rate. And on the, I don't care if we're letting somebody out of prison, it's for a reason. It's that they have rehabilitated or whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't, the gates don't open and all of a sudden their life begins and everything is great. Like, okay, you did your time. No, you're right. You know what happens is you walk out of there and you go, okay, well, now I've got to resituate myself in the communities. I've got to let people know what I did. It's going to follow me for the rest of my life. I'm going to go apply for any job, and this is going to be part of an explanation that I have to make and why, there's all these things. And like you said, you are going to be wearing that check mark for the rest of your life, and it makes it even more difficult. And there should be avenues for these people. And that's why people fail, is because there's nobody there to help once they're out. And this cannabis thing, it's the same exact thing. And we should have, they should have state facilities and whatnot that literally help people as they exit to be able to do this. And it's the same thing with the veterans. That's why we have such a huge suicide rate in the veteran side. there's no help for them. They put them out, and then they, you know, you get a few bucks, and then they get it. It's just like you said, we have to make the laws before it happens, and then we have to have a pathway for after they pay their dues, and then for the people that have had this happen, and now the laws are so clear that, you know, you wouldn't be in jail for that. It literally should be like hand picking. They should be going through files every day in every prison and looking at that file and what was that person in for, and they should be picking these guys out immediately. And how embarrassing was it that during COVID, in the beginning of COVID, they were letting people out of prison for other crimes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. Right.
Well, you know, I just saw this morning.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. California State
No, go ahead.
Senate approves the bill to legalize possession of psychedelics like psilocybin and LSD. That's probably going to be the next thing on your plate for Last Prison Project.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Yeah,
it's just adding more to it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of work to do, right? Yeah, drugs in general. The U.S. is, man, I think we're just wrong-headed. You know, the whole approach to criminalizing. I mean, we know that prohibition doesn't work. It just drives things underground. It makes products less safe, and it puts the money into the hands of criminal organizations. We saw that with alcohol. You know, it was like you can't get it on the legal market, so the gangsters are going to run it. People are going to make bathtub gin, you know, and so we just, our approach that our country has taken just doesn't work. It causes more harm, like you've been pointing out, all those different ways. And I think that's why people and voters, you know, are ready for something new, and they're ready to say, let's decriminalize this, let people, you know, offer education and the ability to maybe even use labs, test your product. What a revelation, right? Make
crazy,
sure it's safe and
crazy, making things safe.
Yeah. And then you can make your own decisions about what you're going to put in your body. And, you know,
the black market will always be there. I mean, the same thing even with alcohol, you know, I mean, people are always be doing stuff on the back, and it is what it is. But at least we have, you know, look at where we're at now. You know, I mean, you're sitting in a beautiful field of cannabis in Hawaii. You know, I've been 12 years now in this. My whole family is in this. My kids, everybody. We're, you know, my son's my business partner. How great is it that we're doing this in cannabis, in something that, you know, 10 years ago, you go to prison for this. And now we're doing podcasts, and I've got, you know, 200 and something employees and families that are, you know, they're thriving off of this and legally, you know. I think it's, you know, it's amazing, but the other side of it is how disgusting is it that somebody that was doing the same thing that we're doing right now today has been in prison for 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is. And that's where we collectively need to do our work to fix, you know, as much as we can. I mean, you can't give somebody back the years of their life, but you also, you know, we can't turn away and like just leave it the way it is.
Right.
You know, it's not acceptable. And that's what I love about Last Prisoner Project. They started so small, such a tiny organization with a couple people, and just dug into the work and said, well, we're just gonna start. Somebody needs to do this.
Right.
And so that's gonna be us. And
so yeah, what is your position with Last Prisoner? You know, like, how are you? How are you affiliated?
I'm an ambassador.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm an ambassador. So that just means that I support the organization and help bring awareness to the work that they're doing, you know, the fact that they exist and how people can support them.
Well, let's make sure at the end of this that, you know, so everybody that's watching and listening can get an idea how they can support, you know, on that end of it. Because that, you know, that's huge. And I know we've talked about here, you know, we have our React Foundation. And so we talked not too long ago about doing a Last Prisoner Project box. And for the React Foundation, it's the same products as PV. It's through us, but it's a charitable project. So you can purchase one of the cartridges, and a portion of that goes to like Last Prisoner. So I think that's our next. We haven't added one for about a year and a half, and we were making some judgment calls on how we were going to do that and what it was going to be. And this is, I think, we owe it to people that are in these positions to help in any way that we can. And I think that's for anybody that is using cannabis. And if you're not using cannabis, you really got to think about, how this has gone and how wrong it is. And if you do have any blood pumping through your heart, you would, really understand that these people have been done so wrong. And imagine that situation. And I've had to put myself in those scenarios where, I'm driving down the road and I have an ounce of weed in my car 15 years ago, and I get pulled over, and next thing you know, I'm in prison for 10 years. Imagine that as a person that doesn't have a criminal background, and then all of a sudden you do, and it was because of a plant. And we're so fortunate now that the people that have carried this and they took the responsibility to get it to where it is today. And it's up to us to now kind of keep that thing going. And like you said, I mean, changing the laws, which is happening, and cannabis is becoming so real in the communities that it's now it's kind of shifting that positive note. I don't think alcohol ever will, and it shouldn't, but the cannabis side, and that now we're able to see what it's really doing. I have to ask you, because this is the big thing for us, and we've had NFL players on, we've had, everybody you can think of, from celebrities. And I always ask, like, how did you get started in cannabis? And what does it do for you, or what has it done for you?
Oh, it's given me so much, honestly. I mean, like many athletes, I think people should know by now that a lot of athletes use cannabis.
Yeah.
Like professional athletes, elite athletes, like it's very widespread. And that's because it's a therapeutic plant, and it gives you benefits for, your wellness overall. So that's definitely something that I've felt in my life. And then specifically as I've gotten older with pain management and having some terrible injuries, I've got a herniated disc in my back and 2 bulging discs, and the spasms from that, being able to have, I've been prescribed all the things too,
Yep.
muscle relaxers, painkillers, all the things, but nothing is as good as cannabis. All the other stuff has terrible side effects, not even necessarily as effective. So why would I choose that when I have something that works and makes my body feel better in every way? So cannabis is medicine. But for me, I'm also grateful that I get to work in this industry and help be part of bringing that medicine to other people, like physically. This is actually our farm, East Fork Cultivars, which is in Southern Oregon.
Nice.
And so,
you're in Oregon.
Well, I was before I moved to Hawaii, but this photo is from our farm. So I'm working remotely right now.
Where did you live in Oregon?
I was in Portland.
Oh, really? Okay. That's why
Yeah.
when I said Portland, you were kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I bet we know some of the same rugby players probably. But yeah, and so it's a privilege to be able to work in the industry. And, I do education as well, cannabis science education, and being able to help people is incredibly rewarding and humbling. When someone comes to you and says, I have cancer, how do I make myself more comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
How do I, get my appetite, or, my son has autism, and we're at the end of our rope and it's getting worse, but we heard that, this could help. what do you know? And I can say, okay, well, here's what I know. Here's what the research says, and here's what I've heard from other people. And so, it's this is not just an industry. It's still a social movement that people have fought for, the right to use this medicine. And we saw that with, the gay community. I mean, this Pride Month, HIV patients in particular fighting for the right to use this medicine. It's helpful for so many different things. And the plant is this wealth of just different compounds that can be medicinal in so many different ways, different conditions. And so, so I'm just grateful for the plant and for the opportunity to work with it and with other people who care about this. And part of that is trying to fight for what's right, and not just looking forward like, oh, here we go, we got this industry, but also really trying to repair and correct the harms, the deep harms that have been done to people through using the plant as an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of sums it up for how everybody is. And anybody that's in cannabis, you have people that are coming into cannabis now on the corporate side that it's just a function of money. And I can tell you, even for my family, how stoked we are that we entered into this from bottom level, literally grinding and understanding people. And there's the feeling that you get when somebody says, I slept for the first time in years, I slept 5 hours, 6 hours, whether it's a veteran, whether it's somebody with cancer, whether it's somebody just with so many aches and pains. And unless you've had that and literally have been in front of somebody, you won't understand that feeling of what it feels like to know that you've helped somebody just in the sleep and pain management. It's amazing that that's what this plant is doing across the board for so many people. And now the greatest thing is that people that have been so, the cannabis is so taboo, and now you have people, and we see it all the time, that have come from outside, and it's kind of like that when you see a gay person come out, and you have the ones that kind of slowly come out, like, here I am. Then you got the ones that come out and just go, oh, here I am. When you see that, the passion that people have for cannabis and the switch that turns on, it's amazing, because they realize how important it is and how valid it is in people's lives. Not just as, sit around, smoke, get high, whatever. You know what I mean? That's great. There's nothing negative about that at all. I don't condone anybody getting a car or anything and driving, but in the same sense, it's safe, and it should be. And then there's people that are dealing with problems that, we hope that us, our families, and anybody else will never have to deal with, but they're using cannabis to get through it, or to mitigate the pain, or as I've seen many of times, and it's horrible, but it's also great at the same time, is people that are, getting towards the end of their life, fighting cancer, and instead of being on opiates and all these drugs, they're with their families and they're using cannabis as their last stage. I've seen it time and time again. So super happy to be a part of that side of it. And I'm really happy that with my kids and family and everybody that's involved, that they get a chance to see how this really works. And that's why we're really big, even within our company, and the functions that we do, and the supporting across the board with Pride, with Brain Tumor, so many things. And our company is so involved. Everybody within the company is so involved. And I think rather than just being a company that's like, that train that we're making money and doing this, you got to be involved. You got to be involved in the community. If you want this to really be something that carries through, and you want to be a part of something that, 50 years down the road, you can look back and go, wow, that was really cool that cannabis is where it is now. you gotta branch out and be a part of the communities and what you're doing. And this is why people like yourself, you talk about the pains and the athletes. Yeah, we've had a bunch on here, and I always remember Charles Dimery, he was NFL for 16 years or something like that, and he said, you know what? I smoked cannabis every single day of my life, and he goes, and I think that's why he said, I honestly believe that's why I didn't get CTE. That's why, because he goes, when we'd get done with a game, the first thing I do is go light up a joint and it's on his podcast, and he's like, other, teammates would go, boom, straight to the alcohol and other, and a lot of other things. But he said, he was always cannabis. And he goes, I can't tell you, there's nothing medical, but he goes, I believe that's why I still have a brain. That's why, because back when he was playing, it's like, I think there's so many things now that people are finally, even when he was smoking, it was probably, it was more for the recreational side, but he didn't, and like he said, he goes, I didn't realize that after a game being beat up, that I was using it medicinally, but I thought I was using it recreationally because that's the only avenue that it was, in his mind. Yeah, I'm going to go get high. But now he looks back and he goes, what I didn't really understand was that it was helping me sleep at night. It was helping the pain. It was this and this and this. Mm-hmm. He wasn't using drugs or alcohol. Other people were. Yeah. So I think now you're getting people like yourself and other people that go, wow, I'm using this medicinally and this is what it's helping. And I need to share that with people.
Yeah. And he looks great.
Right.
What's that? He looks great.
Yeah.
He looks really healthy. And
yeah.
What is he, in his 50s now or something?
Yeah, he's 50 something, 6 kids.
I love to hear that.
Like he's in his 20s.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's what's huge about having people like yourself on this is more so, we have a lot of fun and stuff, but I think the big thing, for us and why we started this a little over a year ago was really just to get people to look at cannabis in a different light and understand any avenue that you have to bring someone like yourself into a spotlight that can talk about cannabis. There's so many people out there that are just absorbing, and you know how society is. I mean, when they see a guy with long hair, dreads, and this and that, he's the stoner, he's this, and that's the stigma side of it. But then you see someone like yourself, and people go, oh, well, maybe I will do cannabis. Maybe I'll try this. And it typically, it's people of any age, but then they start to realize, like, wow, if she's doing it and has been doing it, and this is what her life is, she's not that big, horrible cannabis, marijuana monster that's out there. Right. Like this is a person that's done amazing things in her life and has had cannabis as part of her life. So, I mean, there's a big trust factor that, comes when it's a person like yourself, celebrities and everybody else. Everybody mentally trusts. But the guy that's sitting there, at the beach and just finished surfing for 6 hours and is smoking weed, that's the guy that's like, oh, that's the piece of shit getting high. I was that guy.
His life sounds great, actually.
Listen, that was my life for a long time, and for some reason, I don't know what happened. I cut my hair, and then this came along. But I think reality is that when you look at the diversity, even within our company and the people that work for us, and I think there's there's a huge passion for the things that they do and the things that they're doing. And so I don't think there's anybody that's embarrassed about working in this company. I think it's 100% the opposite direction. And listen, we have, Tommy, which, is a vet and retired from the military, would never think that you'd be doing anything in cannabis, and everybody that's in our company didn't come from cannabis. And that's the greatest thing, is that we have people that have come from all different types of corporations and, where they've worked. And I think everybody's happy for the most part. We have,
it's added like a cool factor. When people ask me what I do, I tell them what I do here. And it's like, oh, you work for a cannabis company? Like, it's like
Except,
their eyes light up. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's cool.
yeah, right. It's never a short conversation though, right? Like most people, that's a small talk question. Like, so what do you do? And I'm always like, here we go.
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause you're gonna have a million questions in 2 seconds.
Because then they start asking the questions.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, my son and I, which started this company 12 years ago, in the beginning, people would say, you know, what do you do? And we would say, oh, we're consultants, or we're this, because you couldn't, you really couldn't. You know, you had the fear of people. There's a lot of fears that were in there, and now, you know, I mean, you know, it was about 5 years in before we started telling people what we really did. And then when you tell people, they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, are you one of those? And that's the truth. Now, like you said, people go, hey, what do you do? You know, yeah, I own a cannabis company. Oh my, you know, and like you said, okay, here we go. I've really been trying to get into cannabis for a while. You know, is there any avenues for me? And, you know, it goes on from there. So it is, Tommy's right. There's a cool factor now of being in cannabis. And I think we're all part of that. How cool is that?
It's badass.
It is. And it feels good to be able to be upfront about it. Like I know that feeling too. You know, 5 years ago when I was like, oh, what am I putting on my resume? Agricultural management, you know. But then, especially when I started my current role with Eastwork, being an educator, or even before that too, when I took on a GM job, I was like, oh, I'm putting my name on paperwork. And that was a choice. And that was a very, like, I thought about, like, you know what? I am ready. I'm going to put my future in this, because if people, you know, say things don't work out down the line, whatever, you're going to work for another industry or something. I don't want to work for anyone that would hold this against me.
Right.
Because that means that we have very different values fundamentally. And I feel like I would always, you know, I would always make the life choices that aligned with those values, at least to that very basic amount, like, you know. And so, but I know what you mean. You're coming out of the green closet in a way, like putting your name on publicly and advocating for cannabis and all those things. But we are destigmatizing it. And that's what I think is so important, because that cuts through some of the propaganda that people have been, you know, told over the years. That's really powerful, and it's not scientific and it's not true. So, you know,
how great is it that, you know, I don't know if you have kids.
I don't,
you know,
auntie, super auntie.
Oh, there you go. I have a plethora. I have twins on the way.
Wow.
Yeah. But how great is it that when it comes to, you know, bring your daddy or mommy to work day and talk about work, you know, that, and this is where it truly is, you know, when, you know, oh, my daddy's a fireman. Oh, you know, my daddy's this. And then they come up and introduce, yeah, my daddy's in the marijuana industry. You watch what happens, because they're all going to be like, ooh,
oh yeah,
wow. You know, back in the day, they wouldn't even let you stand up in front of the class.
They'll like walk you right back out the back door.
Yeah. Reminds me of the daddy day for Talladega Nights. But no, I mean, I think, yeah, you have there is a division within the cannabis industry, and there's the money side of it, and then there's the advocate side, and there's the people that have the great passion for it. And you can have both, and it's necessary, I think, in both ways to make sure that you're kind of on that center line, where you're not deviating too much. I mean, either side, it doesn't work so much. I mean, you have to have a common ground for everybody. And I think the greatest thing about this is that when you see the people that have the passion for cannabis, not on the money side, it's amazing to see what can be done if we stay in that path. And that's the truth. I mean, I think if we're all here for a reason, the money will be there. Don't worry about that. It's now, you know, pick your battles and where you want to go. And obviously you've stretched into Last Prisoner Project and then everything else that you're doing. And what you don't realize, which it's really funny, is that every day that you're talking about cannabis, is a day that you're advocating, and it's so natural that you're not having to. And then, like you said, people ask, and pretty soon you just continue these conversations, and that filters down into, in your case, so many other people that go, oh, you know what? I talked to her. She's this. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then somebody says, yeah, you know what? I talked to this, and it just, that's kind of how it goes. That doesn't happen anymore with a lot of things. You know, that's where the cool factor comes in, because you're being talked about for the things that you've done and the things that you're doing, and that's cannabis. And yeah, rugby's great, but you know, not many people are going, oh yeah, you know, she plays rugby. I mean, I'm sure they are, but the exciting factor of you in that weird way is that you're involved in cannabis, and people go, wow, like, look at her, she's doing this. Why can't I? So
and I think like you were saying, those conversations, that is activism. Just having a conversation with somebody and letting them know your experience and what you know. And that's how everyone can be an activist. That's how social change is made, through those little, like when you were talking about when a gay person comes out, you know, what they found is that all the progress that's been made now for legal rights and marriage and all those things, it wasn't necessarily due to those court cases. It was due to people, like activists made a social movement for coming out and saying, hey, guess what? That picture you have in your head of this, you know, boogeyman stereotype type person isn't right. Like, I do this. This is me.
Right.
This is, you know, and so there's a lot of power in just being open about who you are and owning it and sharing that with other people.
Yeah. And it's always fun to see, you know, especially like our family members and like my wife's grandparents that had never done any cannabis in their life. And to see them use cannabis the first time at 76 years old, had never touched it in their life, at 76 years old, and they love gummies. And, you know, we were, you know, just sitting around and I don't know, I just thought it was a really cool thing that somebody that was so against it and then tried it and loved it and, you know, continues that. It's like you gave them a gift that they should have had a long time ago. And they, I don't know, it's just hard to describe, but we see that. I like that, especially when you're looking through the family side of it and family and friends and people that have not used cannabis ever in their life. I don't know. It's just, it's great, especially when it's a sleep thing. And, you know, my cousin, her mom, which is my aunt, she never used cannabis for a long time. And now her and her husband, and she is, I think, 82. It's just the funniest thing ever. Like these, you know, her and her husband, they're just like, they're like two little kids. And, you know, so we sent them a big care package in Colorado. Not saying that out loud, but I gave it to my cousin. Somehow it ended up in Colorado. And, but anyways, they just like, it's like a whole new drive for them. You know, they're hiking and doing all these things. And now cannabis is giving them, just a different vibe and super alive, and they're big dancers. And, you know, so, I mean, it's always fun to know that you're doing something that isn't harming somebody. You know what I mean? And that's, and I honestly know and feel that anybody that's using cannabis in its raw form, if you want to call it that, something that hasn't had any other things added to it in the ways of prescription, they're getting some benefits out of it, whether you're just sitting around laughing and having fun, which laughing is huge, or, you know, or you're just sitting around and mentally taking a grip on everything around you and kind of sorting things out. That's a big thing for me. So, once again, I mean, people like yourself are huge in making sure that this thing goes forward. Obviously just conversations during the day and podcasts and just generally in life, you can see, that it's big in your life. And if it touches and helps somebody else in their life, then, I mean, that's all you can really ask for.
Absolutely. It's because it works, you know, and that's why the older folks are loving it when you can break through that stigma of, you know, this is your brain on drugs, all the things they've been had hammered into their heads, even if it's just, you know, CBD and they're trying like a nice full spectrum CBD, people with arthritis, all the aches and pains. And once they feel that it works, that changes minds
And I think
away.
It works. That's the slogan that should be out there should be, you know, Nike. What does Nike have?
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Cannabis should just be, it works.
Cannabis. It works.
It's good.
That's exactly what it is.
Trademark it.
Yes. Done.
Oh man,
Tommy, that's not yours.
We're gonna race. We're gonna race for that one.
Tommy just left the office.
I'm already online. Registering that.
It works. I mean that, you know, and I think that's the way that we end this, is that it works. Thank you so much. I hope that when you are in the States and in California, we say it all the time. A few people have been by. I'd love to do a podcast with you in studio. And then you get a nice tour of the facility and a giant gift bag. And unfortunately, we can't get you one to Hawaii. But guys, here's on the other side of this is the marijuana monster, right? Anna Symonds, the marijuana monster. This is what it looks like for everybody out there. She's like, oh shit. Yeah, that's it. So that monster that everybody talks about. I have to thank you because I love this, and I love the fact that you are so supportive and with what you've done in your life, and that this is part of your life. And the fact that you are, I mean, look you're sitting in a beautiful field of cannabis. And this
So
is actually
real.
And the thing is this is actually your field in Oregon. So
The farm is beautiful, as you can see. It's heavenly.
Thank you again. I welcome you to come in anytime that you're in the States, and even if it's not a podcast, just come by and say hi and get high. Get high and be a part of what we're doing. So anything that you have that you want to promote, and we'll get the Last Prisoner Project and anything else that's on there, we'll make sure to get that to Tommy. Love to have some more pictures of your fine crop behind you. And anything like that. So once again, thank you. Really appreciate you and everything that you're doing and have done. We always got to make sure we thank people for the things that they've done as well, not just what they're doing, or vice versa. I think that's how it works.
It works.
That's it. And on that note, I came up with a great slogan today. It works. It wasn't Anna. It was me. I got that for the record. All right, Anna, thank you so much. PV Unfiltered, like and subscribe. Somewhere over here, this is what you get. It's free. This education is free, and then the other funny shit we may charge for that later. So, PV Unfiltered. Peace. Thanks, Anna.